Half a day, everyone. For this video, we'll be covering ratios and proportions. By the end of this video, you should be able to identify and define what a ratio is. You'll be able to use rates and solve for unit rates. You'll also be able to use proportions, and this includes cross multiplication, solving, and solving word problems using these proportions. Let's get started. First of all, a ratio is a relationship between two things. These can be boys to girls, apples to oranges, shoes to slippers, anything like that. So if there are 8 girls and 5 boys in a class, the ratio of girls to boys is 8 to 5. 8 girls to 5 boys. The ratio of boys to girls is the opposite, 5 to 8. We can also give another piece of information. The ratio of boys to the total number of students in the class is 5 to 13, which is how many students there are in the class. A ratio can be written in 2 different ways. So if we say the ratio from A to B, one way that you'll see is A colon B. We read it as A to B. Another way you'll see it is written in fraction form, where you have A over B. In this video, we'll be using the one where it's looking like a fraction. Okay, for example 1, in a class there are 13 men and 12 women. Find the following ratios. Men to women, I identify first how many men there are. There are 13. How many women are there? 12. Women to men, it's going to be the opposite. There's 12 women and 13 men. Women to total students, I know there are 12 women. Total number of students in the class is the men plus the women, right? Or the women plus the men. 12 plus 13 is 25. So we have 12 over 25. In the next example, we'll see one that we can actually simplify. Example 2, there are 10 apples and 15 oranges in a basket. Find the following ratios. Reduce to lowest terms if possible. So when I see reduce to lowest terms, that tells me simplify. So apples to oranges, 10 apples to 15 oranges, we have 10 over 15. I'll just simplify this fraction normally. Both 10 and 15 are divisible by 5. I'll divide both by 5. We have 2 over 3. Letter B, oranges to total fruits. It's not given, but I can find this out. There are only 10 apples and 15 oranges. 10 plus 15 is 25. So oranges, there's 15 oranges. 15 over 25. I can divide these both by 5 once again, so we have 3 over 5. Oranges to total fruits in the basket. Okay, so we've talked about ratios, which compares 2 different numbers or amounts of things. A rate is a specific kind of ratio that involves 2 unlike things. It usually uses the word per, that's important, which indicates division. So again, we're going to be using fractions. If you earn $48 in 4 hours, your rate in dollars per hour, we see that per, so I'm going to write it as, I think so we have $48 over 4 hours. And then I'll just, your rate in dollars per hour is $40 for 4 hours. But we want to simplify this so that I only have 1 in my denominator. So I'm going to simplify this fraction. 48 is divisible by 4. So 48 divided by 4 is 12. We have $12 per 1 hour. So we can also write this as $12 per hour. Either way is fine. Note that this is also called a unit rate. A unit rate is a rate with a denominator of 1. So whatever your denominator, and it's a lot of times you see it in terms of time, so per day, per second, per hour, it's with 1 hour, 1 day, 1 second. That's a unit rate. Okay, for example 3, Kara drives 180 miles in 5 hours. What is her rate in miles per hour? So I want to do the same thing, set up that equation. So it's miles per hour, so miles should be on the top. 180 miles over 5 hours. So what I'm going to do is simplify this fraction. I know 180 and 5 are both divisible by 5 because 80 ends in a 0. 180 divided by 5, you can do this on this side, do the long division, but it's going to come out to 36. So we have 36 miles in 1 hour, per 1 hour. You can also write this as 36 mph, or miles per hour. Moving now to example 4, a 12-ounce package of cheese contains 20 slices and costs $3. What is the cost per ounce? So when I see this per ounce, I want to find the unit rate. So the money per 1 ounce. The first thing I want to do is set up my rate, where we have ounces and then also the money, right? So the cost is going to be on top. Cost per ounce. Cost will be on top, $3. Per ounce, we have 12 ounces, and OZ is the label for ounce. Okay, so 3 over 12. Since you're working with cost, you don't want to put 1 over 4. And we want to find the unit rate, right? It says per ounce. I want to find that unit rate. I'm going to actually divide. 3 divided by 12. When you do this using long division, it's going to give you 0.25 per 1 ounce. Or we can say 25 cents per ounce. What is the cost per slice? Now I no longer care about how many ounces it is. I care about how many slices there are. So if it's $3 for 20 slices, I'm going to set it up as $3 over 20 slices. Then I'll divide this on the side. 20 divided by 3 is going to come out to 0.15. So it's going to be 15 cents per slice. We're moving now into ratios. If two ratios form a proportion, then A over B equals C over D. And we're able to check this using cross multiplication. And cross multiplication occurs when I have a fraction is equal to a fraction, like this, A over B is equal to C over D, and I cross multiply. So the top of the first one, I want to multiply to the bottom of the second one. So it's going to look like they cross each other. So this, A times D is equal to B times C. Cross multiplication. We can check if two ratios form a proportion by equating them and cross multiplying to see if they are true. And for example 5, we're going to just do it by example. Do the following ratios form a proportion? And I could check this by doing that cross multiplication. So we have 5 over 7 is equal to 10 over 14. I'm rewriting it so I have more space. 5 times 14, 7 times 10. One thing you might also want to do is simplify one of them. If you can simplify it, then that's another way to do it. But for this one, I'm just going to cross multiply. 5 times 14 is going to be 70. And then we have 7 times 10 is 70. Since this is true, then it is proportion. For letter B, we're going to do the same thing. We'll cross multiply. 7 times 7 is 49. 4 times 12 is 48. It's close, but these are not true. So, no, it is not a proportion. Now we're going to look at solving proportions. And proportions that need solving are ones with a variable in one of the spaces. Typically, we'll use x. So to solve a proportion, we're going to follow these steps. One would be to cross multiply and equate the cross products like we did in our last example. Number 2 would be to solve for the variable normally. And then number 3 would be to check your solution by substituting in the value, and then you can try your cross multiplication again. And this is just so we just kind of make sure about that our answers are correct. Okay, so we have x over 15 is equal to 3 over 5. Let's rewrite this. Then we'll cross multiply x times 5, 5x. 3 times 15, which is 45. Solving for x, I'll divide by 5. X is equal to 9. And what I'm going to do is check our answer by plugging it back in. 9 over 15 is equal to 3 over 5. If I cross multiply this, 9 times 5 is 45. 15 times 3 is 45. It is the correct answer. X is equal to 9. And although it's not always necessary to check your answers by plugging them back in and cross multiplying again, it's usually a good idea when you're new to something to just check it just in case. For example, 7, we'll do the same thing. Notice that we have a fraction within our fraction here. Not only just a fraction, we have a mixed number. So what I'm going to do is put that into an improper fraction so it's easier to work with when I'm doing my multiplication. So I'm going to put that into an improper fraction, which would be 4 times 1 is 4 plus 1 is 5. So we're going to have 5 over 4 over 6. I always want to differentiate those lines so I don't get confused. Is equal to x over 16. So some people, they like to actually simplify this into one fraction. What I want to do is just cross multiply. So 5 over 4 times 16. I might say 16 over 1 is equal to 6 times x. Solving this left side, I'm going to cancel these. So 4 and 16 are both divisible by 4. 4 and 1. 5 times 4 is 20. That's going to be over 1. So 20 is equal to 6x. Solve for x by divided by 6 on both sides. So x is equal to 20 over 6. Let me write this on this side actually. 20 over 6. This simplifies. They're both divisible by 2. So we have 10 over 3, which is a good answer. So x is equal to 10 over 3. If you want, you could also convert it to a mixed number because that's what they originally started with, a mixed number. But 10 over 3 is acceptable. Actually, for me, it's preferred. Now we move on to word problems. So solving word problems using proportions. To solve a proportion word problem, follow these steps. The first one is to use a letter to represent an unknown quantity. Second step is to set up your proportion, making sure the units of the measure are next to the same unit of the measure in the other ratio. For example, if you have miles per gallon, so you're talking about gas, you want it to be miles per gallon for one ratio and then miles per gallon for the other one. If it's on the top, it stays on the top. If it's on the bottom, it stays on the bottom. You don't want it to be miles per gallon and then gallon per miles. That's wrong. It should always be the same way. And the third step is to, of course, solve the proportion and answer the question. Example 8, Ava purchased 2 pounds of grapes for $5. How many pounds of grapes can she get for $20? So for this one, it's going to be pounds on the top, so pounds of grapes. And for the bottom of my proportion, it's going to be, of each ratio, it's going to be the money, so dollars. So setting up my first one, 2 pounds for $5. So we have 2 pounds for $5 is equal to, I already know how many dollars I'm going to be using, $20. And now I'm going to do the first step, which is to use a letter to represent an unknown quantity. So how many pounds of grapes? The unknown is how many pounds of grapes that she can get. So it's going to be X pounds. So what I'm going to do now is just write this without all those things there because I have the numbers and variable in the correct spots. We have 2 over 5 is equal to X over 20. And I'll solve this normally by using our cross multiplication. 2 times 20, 40. 5 times x is 5x. Solving for x, we're going to divide both sides by 5. 40 divided by 5 is 8, so it's going to be, x is going to be, make that equals 8 pounds of grapes. And of course, the best way actually to answer this question would be to say in a full sentence, Ava can get 8 pounds of grapes for $20 at this rate. Example 9, in our last example, on a map, 5/8 of an inch represents 6 miles. How many miles would 1 1/6 inches represent? So again, we're working with our fractions, and we have another mixed number. So what I'm going to do first is convert that to an improper fraction so I can work with it easily. So 1 and 1/6 is actually going to be 6 times 1. 6 plus 1 is 7, so we have 7/6 inches. Next, what I want to do is identify what's the question asking, right? How many miles? That's my unknown. Whenever you see how many or how much, that's your unknown variable. So how many miles? I'll use x will be the number of miles. Okay, so now we set up our proportion. On a map, 5/8 of an inch represents 6 miles. So if I make it inches over miles, it'll be 5/8 inches over 6 miles is equal to, now we're looking at 1 1/6 inches, so we have 7/6 inches over x miles. We don't know how many miles there are. I'm going to do what I did last time, is take all of these without the labels now, or without the units, I mean. So we have 5/8 over 6 is equal to 7/6 over x. I'll cross multiply. We have 5/8 times x. 5/8x is equal to 6 times 7/6. I know these 6's are going to cancel out, so it's going to be equal to 7. 5/8x is equal to 7. I want to solve for x. There's two ways to do this. You can either multiply by the reciprocal, so multiply both sides by 8/5. For me, I like to get rid of them one by one. So what I'm going to do is multiply by 8 to get rid of my denominator. 5x is equal to 56. Dividing that by 5 now. We have x is equal to 56 over 5. If you want, you can, let me put that in actually, sorry. So 56 over 5 miles. Typically when you have word problems, if it's something like that, it tells you more when you give either a decimal or a mixed number, because 56 over 5 miles, I don't really know how far that is. If I converted that to a mixed number, which is the same as this, so this would be 11 1/5 mile, that tells me a lot more, right? 56 over 5, I'm not sure how long that is. 11 miles, that's something easier for me to understand. But again, it is common to leave your answer as an improper fraction. However, you do need that unit, either way that you put it. Okay, that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. Have a great day.